Hi, Phil.
Hello, Arthur. What are
Phil.
we looking at here? There's some people on a couch. What's happening?
This is the International, Phil. As you know, the International is the International Dota 2 Championships.
Sure.
But here's the thing about the International, which is that there's a lot of sort of sports-style coverage around it, and watching it can be a little confusing. So we wanted to sort of give people an introduction into what they're looking at and sort of what it looks like, and basically have you, Phil, as a Dota noob, ask as many stupid questions as you possibly can.
Yeah, and I mean, I've watched some Dota before. I've played a teensy bit of Dota before, but I like watching it, and I like the idea of it being open for people who don't play a ton to watch. So we thought maybe this would help out.
Yeah.
So we're looking at here. This is Team Secret.
Yes, this is Team Secret, widely considered to be one of, if not the best professional team in Dota right now. And what we're looking
Are
at...
they going to take it?
I don't want to spoil it, but so what's happening right now...
Are they going to take the International this year?
I think that they have a pretty good shot.
Okay.
So what's happening right now is this is the draft.
Yeah.
Dota 2 competitively uses a game mode called Captain's Draft. And what that is each team takes turns picking and banning heroes. So here, these dudes are talking about why each team wants to pick or ban these heroes. So right now, Secret has banned Queen of Pain and Shadow Fiend, who are both very powerful characters, especially for mid, which is the character that goes middle. And Cloud9 has banned Naga Siren and Leshrac.
Well, and I'm seeing Team Secret's first choice here was the Gyrocopter, which that's one of the only people who I've played as.
That is a...
So discovering that that's a hero that you can play in competitive blows my mind.
That is considered to be one of the most strong heroes in the game right now, as a what's called a safe lane farmer, which is there are different lanes. Each side has a safe lane that has the most advantage to them in the way that the neutral units spawn, or not the neutral units, but each team's AI units spawn, and like how well they should be able to kill creeps and get golden experience so that they can become more powerful.
So from Cloud9's perspective, you know, they see that this team has chosen Gyrocopter. Is there a counter pick to that they want to make sure to get? Is there somebody who they want to make sure to ban immediately? You know, what's the...
For some characters there are. Gyrocopter less so. You'll hear the analysts talk a lot about the kinds of damage that these characters do and what each side will need to do to sort of counteract strategies that each team tends to favor. So in this case, Dazzle has an ability called Shallow Grave that he casts on a hero that prevents them from dying for a certain amount of time. Even if they go like to 1 hit point, they can't be killed.
That seems useful.
It is extremely useful. It's very useful for Secret, and this is something analysts will talk about a lot, in that Team Secret is a team that tends to push team fights very hard.
Sure.
They push themselves absolutely to the limits of what their characters' resources are, particularly engaging in fights and staying long after other people would retreat. And generally succeeding. And Dazzle, the character of Shallow Grave, is a character that really helps enable that. He also has heals, and he can reduce and buff the armor on his own team. So that's a very Secret, consistent hero.
So some of the stats we're going over there, you know, they were showing off the stats this player had in the previous game.
Sure, yeah.
I was seeing XP per minute.
Right.
Gold per minute.
Right.
These are the kind of stats that they're going to be tracking to determine how a player performs.
Yeah, generally they're just trying to keep track of how people have performed in previous games. XP per minute is experience, and gold is the money you get from killing creeps, which are the AI controlled units of each team, as well as neutral units that can be found in the jungles on the map, as well as killing enemy heroes gives gold. So this is Cloud9. That's Eternal Envy. He's sort of the lead player on Cloud9. If you see Cloud9 played, you'll hear a lot of talk about Eternal Envy or EE because he's a well-known player.
What are the other two here? There's KDA and NW.
Net worth.
Kills, death, assists, I guess would be KDA.
NW is net worth. That's like the total value of all the items in gold that they had at the end of the game.
Sure.
KDA is kills, deaths, and assists.
Yeah.
So with a character like Gyrocopter, ideally you would have a lot of kills and not as many deaths, because that's what that character is good for. He's there to kill other people on the other team.
So this person, this fellow here seems to be named Puppy.
Yes. There are a lot of names. It will be kind of hard to keep track of, but as you watch more and more of the tournament next week, or in general, you'll start to get a feel for the names, and also, generally speaking, each player has a color on the map, and that is a good thing to keep an eye out on. Like, just look at the hero, and look at the color, and look at the map, and you'll see where people are going.
Well, and that's one of the interesting things about Dota 2 is that you're also getting, like, when you're watching the competitive play, you get a feel for how the teams perform, and the strategy of of each team. But then also, like, you start to get a feel for strategy of individual players, and as seasons go on, there's going to be people shifting around and going to different teams.
And you'll hear a lot of talk about specific players on these two teams as this game goes on.
Sure.
Fata is considered a very good player. I think that he was a core or carry. Going by his net worth and GPM and all that. Numbers like that for a player typically suggest that they're a active engagement hero. Like, they get involved in fights, they do a lot of damage.
Okay.
But certain names will come up a lot. Like, you'll hear about Eternal Envy. Like I said, you'll hear about Arteezy, who is the carry player on Team Secret. He's considered to be one of, if not the best carries in Dota.
Sure. So we're about halfway through this draft at this point.
Yes.
We're seeing how the teams are shaping up. As somebody who knows Dota far better than I do, and theoretically better than a lot of the people watching, what are your thoughts on how these choices are shaping up at this point?
So certain characters indicate certain strategies. For Cloud9, Tusk, who's the hero in the lower left corner, he has a ability that allows him to roll himself up into a snowball and to roll other heroes on his team up into that snowball, and basically just roll over all terrain in the game and smash into another character and stun them.
Okay.
Which is very good for what are called ganks, which are where you leave a lane and go to a different lane and try to pick off an enemy hero when they don't expect it. And Bane, the character next to Tusk, is also good at that. So for Cloud9, those are a pair of what will likely be roaming supports, which means that a lot of supports will stay in lane with their carry. They're babysitting. They're there to protect that carrier, that core, while they get their experience in gold and build items so they can become more powerful. Roaming supports do that some of the time, but they also wander around the map to try to help destabilize other lanes, to get kills in other lanes. And so Cloud9 just made a pick right now that's indicative of strategy, which is Anti-Mage. Anti-Mage is a hero where you'll hear a lot about 4v5, which is where the rest of Anti-Mage's team... There's a stupid motorcycle outside my door. The rest of Anti-Mage's team will engage in fights and generally do what they're supposed to, while Anti-Mage farms everywhere that he can. He just kills as many creeps as he can to get as much gold as he can to build items. And
is this primarily so, like, Anti-Mage just becomes a really powerful character with the right items?
Yes. Once he gets enough items, he's very difficult to kill. He's very difficult to take down for the other team. But he leaves his teammates at a disadvantage while he's doing that because they're outnumbered by a larger number of active players looking for fights on the other team. So looking at this draft, I don't want to get into it so much because I'm not nearly as knowledgeable as the gentleman on stage right now.
Sure.
There will be a lot of very valuable analysis at TI before every match from the panel, sort of picking apart these drafts and explaining what to expect. And a lot of times they'll sort of give you an idea of who you want to watch. like right there, you'll hear them talking about how Cloud9 has to help their Anti-Mage get farm and like stay alive and get big. So as you're watching the tournament next week, it's good to tune in before the match starts so you can see this sort of analysis, because this is the kind of stuff that will really teach you, as someone new to the game or someone that's very sort of passively interested in Dota, what you're probably going to see, and also what expectations are for each team and how they might circumvent them.
Sure, absolutely, that makes sense. And do you feel like, in general, the analysts for these games are going to be speaking in a language that a more casual Dota 2 observer can understand?
I think that you'll understand about 2 out of 3 words, or maybe 4 out of 5.
Sure.
And hopefully this video will help to explain some of that stuff.
Yeah,
like we'll
absolutely.
go when they talk about building items, we'll talk a little bit about that in this video to sort of give you an idea of what they're talking about. And if we need to pause, like if Phil gets confused, then we'll pause and talk a little bit about what we're seeing to try to educate you on what's going on.
One of the things that it does always impress me with the this whole process is just how long it is.
Yes,
the team picking is like it's not something that's over in a few minutes. It's a lengthy part of the before the game even starts.
Many games of Dota 2 on the competitive level are won or lost in the draft stage.
Sure.
So keeping the other team from getting heroes that maybe they're incredibly good with or very strong in the meta right now is important, while also securing heroes from your team that can succeed, like having a strategy. Like each team has a specific person that tends to handle their drafts. So this is an incredibly important part of the game that a lot of people don't quite understand, and this is one of the things that the analysts are really good at, is explaining what all this means.
Well, looking at this list now, is there a team that you think the makeup looks stronger?
The thing about Cloud9 is that with that Anti-Mage, they will need to fight a lot without him, whereas Team Secret will be able to fight together very often. And previously, RTZ, who is the carry player on Secret, has been very effective with Gyrocopter. So that's definitely something that Cloud9 will be watching for, because Cloud9 is a team that is capable of incredible play. They can be very inconsistent. They can accidentally lose, like through sort of mistakes that other people imply that they see coming. But on any given day, Cloud9 can beat almost any other team in Dota. Which is why they are at the International.
Absolutely.
So right now, all the heroes have been picked. Different people on each team are selecting their heroes, and a lot of teams will use this time to discuss last-minute strategy before the game actually loads up. Because once everybody selects their heroes, the game loads into the map, and there's a starting horn that sounds after 90 seconds.
That's right.
So this is
and
where
in this first 90 seconds, what are players doing? Like, what's the
they buy their items with their starting gold and start moving out to their lanes, and this is where it leaves the analysis desk and the analysts, and it goes to the casters, who are usually different people. So here is where the casters will introduce who's playing. And they'll give their own analysis and sort of give context to where the game is. In this is during the group stages, so they're sort of establishing what this game means to each team.
Yeah, absolutely.
So again, this is a pretty sort of predictable, basic.
Let's talk a little bit about like what items are people starting with in the beginning.
So usually people will leave their base with regen, which gives them additional health or mana when they lose it. And then 1 or 2 other items.
Those are the tangos, is that right?
Yes, tangos are it's like a leaf with a certain amount of charges that you use to eat a tree, because video games, and it gives you a slow amount of health over time. I think it's 8 health for 10 seconds or something like that. It's a pretty decent, amount of additional regeneration. So as the game starts, bounty runes spawn, and those are worth extra money at the beginning. Every 2 minutes, runes will spawn in the river, top and bottom, and teams will fight over those runes.
Yes.
So right now we have Magnus going bottom, and we have Axe as a safe lane character, which is kind of unusual for that character. And meanwhile, we have a lot happening mid already. So this is where we talk about that roaming support, which is Bane, the purple guy, is sort of a roaming support. And you'll see that they took the mid character for Secret down pretty low.
Yeah, I saw that character almost died.
Yes. And here you have a blocked camp. Neutral camps will respawn when they're killed or out at a certain time.
Sure.
Unless there's something occupying that space. And you'll see characters using wards to block their enemy camps, especially camps that can be used to help.
Arthur, why did they destroy all those trees?
They destroyed those trees to get to the ward that's blocking their camp.
Sure.
So you'll see there that there's like that red health bar on that sort of eyeball thing. That means that it's a dire ward, which will block that camp until Cloud9 can figure it out.
Sure.
And here you'll see graphics that are sort of showing how these two players sort of fare up against each other.
Well, there is a lot happening.
And that is First Blood, which is extra gold. That's the first kill of the game gives extra gold over later kills.
So Secret, it seems like,
are very aggressive.
Early in the game, they are certainly dominating to some degree. And what's really impressing me here is you were saying that RTZ tends to be very good with gyrocopter. He seemed to know the range perfectly that he needed to be at to avoid getting shot, but while still shooting the enemies.
So what we just saw there is called a denial.
Yes.
So if you're low on health, to keep the enemy team from getting the experience and gold from killing you, you can get yourself killed by a neutral unit on the map. In that case, he ran into the dragon pit and had the sort of big dragon boss on the map, Rashawn, kill him, which takes him back to his spawn point more quickly and heals him up more quickly than it would if he walked all the way back, and he doesn't have to spend money on a teleport scroll to get there.
And also stops the enemy team from getting any of the gold or experience they would have got if they killed him.
So that's why it's called a deny, because it denies the benefits of killing him from the other team. And here we have Razor as a character that as a mid can drain the damage from another hero, and add it to his own damage, so that's what he was doing.
Secret is just, they were so aggressive. It's kind of impressive. It's like really surprising me.
Yeah, and this is what they do. This is what Secret does. Like even here, top lane, you see Secret pressuring. You'll hear a lot about pressure. Pressure drives the enemy team away from where they want to be. In this case, preventing that anti-mage from farming, from getting golden experience, which is really what Cloud9 wants. Secret is applying pressure on them and hurting their economy.
So at this point, these Cloud9 characters are in the trees. Does RTZ know they're there? Or are they out of the line of vision?
The trees actually block vision.
Yeah.
So you'll see like a lot of fog. And that means that the teams don't have vision of that spot. So no, he didn't know they were there, but you'll hear about game sense, which is what people sort of develop and expect other players to do things, and RTZ has very good game sense.
So he probably assumed that they were there.
Yeah, exactly. He assumed that he wasn't safe or knew what he needed to do to be safe. And the other thing is that he knows when he can dive the tower, which is what it's called when you dive underneath the enemy tower, which will do a lot of damage to you if you're not careful, and get a kill. He knows what he needs to do, and that's one of the reasons why he's so good at his role in Dota. This is
So
something
as a viewer, the question that I have, you know, watching this happen, and the question for, like, again, more casual Dota viewers, maybe people who haven't watched a lot, how do you keep track of the action in a game as so many things are happening at once, as the view is bouncing all over the map as it is right now?
One of the things that casters do is look at the map. Like, you can see the different heroes interacting at a rudimentary way. Also, there are lots of graphs available to casters and to spectators. So in the upper left corner, for example, right now, you'll see the last hits denies chart, which shows how many last hits on creeps each hero has. Last hitting a creep gives you gold. Denying a creep prevents the other team from killing them, and also only gives them half XP for that creep dying. So generally, the more last hits and denies that a team has at this stage, the better they're doing.
Oh, Bane is in trouble.
So right now, you heard them talk about stick charges. There are items called magic wands, where every time an enemy casts a spell around them, it gets a charge, and that charge, when used, gives you health and mana. But you have to use it. It doesn't automatically use itself. So here you'll see them try to gank Gyrocopter, but Gyrocopter dropped his ult, which disrupted what they were trying to do and allows him to survive.
Nice.
And the Cloud9 gank, the snowball, was actually pretty well executed. But you'll hear the casters talk about how the charge that happened, which that character Magnus does, it pushes things away. The charge actually disrupted their gank. And meanwhile, that Razor was about to die mid, so he teleported home and survived. And you'll hear casters and analysts talk about things like reliable stuns, and a stun would prevent something like that, would prevent them from teleporting out. It locks the hero down. So that's one of the things that you'll be wanting to pay attention to in drafts.
Which characters like have stuns available?
Exactly, because not every character has a stun. And honestly, Secret doesn't have a lot. Cloud9 has some. So just watching this game right now, things have calmed down a little bit, but you'll notice if you're paying attention that the anti-mage changed lanes, because he should be getting more farm than he is, and he wasn't getting it. So Cloud9 are rotating. They're trying to reconfigure how their team is set up to get gold more effectively.
Essentially, like, mid-game, they're recognizing that their strategy
isn't working.
As currently set up, is not going to win them the game, so they're trying to salvage it by switching things up.
So on the right, really quick, you'll see that the Venomancer has... The Venomancer's picture was next to a picture of boots. That means that he bought that item. So as you're watching, you'll want to look at that, because when characters get items is incredibly important to how a game will unfold. And you'll hear casters talk about this. It's called item timings.
And we've talked about a little bit in videos previously, Arthur, that like items are the thing that is really like the most complex part of Dota, and the part that scares off me, certainly, to some degree. Like,
it certainly makes it
so much harder to... Yeah, it's just harder to figure out, like, on top of all these different heroes, what all the different items do. Are there any specific items that you would recommend going into the International? Like, obviously, team makeup's going to be a huge part of, like, which items heroes are going for. Are there any specific items that you think are very worth watching out for, that, like, oh, these are going to pop up in a lot of games, and they're going to be game-changing?
Sure, so right now you'll see that Axe just bought his Blink Dagger. And what Blink Daggers do is allow you to more or less instantly move up to 1,200 units, which he just did, and surprise an enemy. So Axe blinked from far away, used an ability called Call, which freezes someone in place and forces them to attack him, while the Gyrocopter used his ultimate ability, which is called Call Down, to finish the job if Axe couldn't. Certain heroes really rely on items to become as viable as they could be. And right now, Team Secret is smoked, which means they're invisible. until they reach a certain radius of an enemy hero, and then the smoke will break. So smoke allows a team to move around the map without being seen even by wards.
Yeah.
And it also allows them to move more quickly. So
is that an item? Is
yes.
that something you're buying? Okay.
They're consumable single-use items that there's only so many of in the shop, and it takes time for them to respawn. And that's the same thing for wards. Wards, you can only buy so many of at a time before they have to come back in stock.
Sure.
So typically, if a team isn't doing as well, one of the ways to try to compensate for that is to buy a smoke and group up and try to pick off an enemy hero when they're not expecting it.
Okay.
Like if you look at the map right now, you'll see that a couple of the X's, the colored X's, are alone. So maybe Cloud9 decides that they want to group up and try to take Axe when he's alone in the jungle.
Yeah.
Although that is no longer the case. Other items you'll hear talked about are BKBs, which are items that, when triggered, allow the user to become immune to spells.
That seems very important.
It's very useful. There are certain things that go through BKBs, and you'll hear the casters talk about that. Things like pure damage is something that goes through BKB.
Okay.
But they become very important to surviving, especially right now with the state of the game. The meta, and you'll just see someone died right there because they hung around too long. The meta has sort of allowed magic-wielding heroes to be more effective than they were. And here you'll see Cloud9 smoked, trying to pick off this Dazzle because he's all by himself.
Sure.
So they'll work their way around behind him, and now they'll try to kill him as quickly as possible. And the reason they want to kill him as quickly as possible is because he can cast Shallow Grave and teleport away. But Bane used an ability called Nightmare to cancel his teleport scroll.
Okay. And when he starts doing the teleport scroll, generally they can't kill him at that point.
Well, they can if they can do enough damage, but with Shallow Grave, they can't be killed.
Yeah, that's right. Okay. I forgot. That's right. They have the ability that character has the ability to survive.
So yeah, as you watch more Dota, you'll see that there are certain characters where you can expect certain scenarios. And with Dazzle, you can expect people that look dead or look like they're going to get killed will be saved by that Shallow Grave.
Yeah.
Although, ironically, what we saw right now, by the way, is called Spell Steal. That character's ability is to steal the last used spell from an enemy character.
Sure.
Which is incredibly useful.
Yeah, absolutely.
And
it can be any spell that they use?
There are a couple spells that don't count, but very, very few.
Okay. So like even like an ultimate in that
yes,
case.
Especially ultimates.
Okay.
And the thing with Rubik is that most characters require a certain number of seconds or milliseconds to cast a spell. That's called their cast time.
Yeah.
And with Rubik, there is no cast time for a stolen spell. It's cast instantly. For almost everything. There are a couple of channeled spells, which means that it takes time to cast them. But generally speaking, stolen spells are cast almost instantly. They're cast faster than they would be on the original hero. So here, that person knows that he's in trouble and he's teleporting away. So that's a blown smoke. Here we have a Dazzle that is in a really bad spot. And he has a Shallow Grave, but he's trapped for so long that there's not really any getting away.
Yeah, there's nowhere for him to run.
So other items, BKBs are very important, especially right now. Blink Daggers, Force Staffs are kind of like Blink Daggers. They push a hero, but they can be used on an enemy hero or a friendly unit in addition to yourself. So they allow you to sort of shuffleboard someone in the direction they're facing. Which can lead to some pretty fun things. Mechanism is an item that heals the rest of the team when used.
Yeah.
Which can be very important in team fights. Mana boots, arcane boots.
Boots in general are apparently a very big thing.
There are lots of different kinds of boots. Some of them are more useful than others. Guardian Greaves are a combination of arcane boots and a mechanism. Those are one of the new items that were added in the most recent big update to Dota.
Sure.
So at this point, like, the
Where
game
does
is
here's my serious question: is where does Venomancer even wear those boots? Like, how do you even?
Yeah, it's weird, right? I mean, like, sometimes you just gotta let it go.
Yeah.
And just go with it. Maybe he puts them on the little snake things that he puts. Those are called
Sure.
plague
Okay.
wards.
Yeah.
One of the things you'll see a lot of in this game are poison damage. When you see like a purple number tick off someone, that means that they're taking damage over time. And that's kind of a big deal in this game. Damage over time is something that, if someone's not careful, could kill them even if they survive the initial attack.
Yeah, I mean, especially with a team like Secret that's pushing so hard, like you said, they're getting themselves to the point of almost being dead in a lot of cases, and then retreating at the last second.
Right. And poison both does damage over time and slows the hero that it's affecting. So right now, that is going to be a Magnus that gets killed. He's going to get dunked.
Yep.
That's Axe's ability. When a hero is below a certain health percentage threshold, or a certain health number, Axe can kill them instantly with his ultimate. And if he does kill them, he gets a speed boost, and the cooldown on his ultimate is reset.
Sure.
So, interestingly, like, one of the things you'll hear people talk about is ability interactions. And as an example of ability interactions, Dazzle's Shallow Grave prevents someone from dying when it's cast on them, but there are certain abilities that go through it, like that dunk thing that Axe does. So if C9 had Axe, they would be able to use that to get through the shallow graves that Secret is going to be casting a lot in this game. And when C9 drafted Dazzle, one of the things they were probably thinking is that they wanted to draft Axe as well, so that Dazzle's really important ability to do that couldn't be defeated. And right here you see Razor taking damage over time and almost dying. So what's happening here is the supports on Secret have stacked Ancients. Ancients are very powerful neutral enemies on the map.
Sure.
They give a lot of gold, but they're hard to kill.
They seem like just nice little dinosaurs who are minding their own business.
They do a lot of damage. So with camps, if you walk into a camp and walk away and draw aggro on those enemies, like you draw their attention, if you walk out of a certain invisible bounding box and the timer hits 0, a new group of enemies will spawn there.
Okay.
And then the other enemies will walk back and you'll have twice as many enemies, and that means that you can kill those things and get all that gold. Otherwise, if the camp is there at 0 seconds, nothing happens.
Sure.
So one of the things that you'll see supports doing that's really important is walking up to camps and stacking them for powerful characters on their team to go and farm later. And for both Secret and C9, that is a very important thing to happen in this game.
So that's something they're doing throughout the game,
and right now
at certain points.
Just really quick, you'll see a factoid in the upper right corner. That's information about characters or the tournament that one of the casters or the camera person on the team put there, just as a sort of like bit of trivia.
Sure.
And those can be very useful, or they can be totally pointless or just fun.
If nothing else, it's like telling you a little bit more about what this player has done in the past and giving you a little bit of insight into maybe their style.
Exactly. So to go back to the graphs again for a second, we've moved from a last hits graph to a net worth graph, because now that heroes are dying, that's a much more important measure of what a hero has, economically speaking. So you'll see.
Yeah, so that's just generally as you get further in the game, that's going to be the more important thing. Is like it starts out the beginning of the game, you want to be getting last hits. Whoever's getting the most last hits is doing the best generally.
Right, and now because there have been so many deaths, now that the overall net worth is a much better indication of how someone is doing economically. And right now you have Gyrocopter and Axe, who are Team Secret heroes, sitting on the top. And the Anti-Mage, who is Cloud9's hard carry, the character that needs the most gold and the most time, isn't where he wants to be. He's in 5th.
And where would ideally, in a game where Anti-Mage is going to really make the difference, he's going to be up near the top.
Ideally, you want Anti-Mage at number 1.
Yeah.
And eventually he could get there. So here we have another smoke from Cloud9 looking for an isolated secret hero. But Secret is now roaming together. Like, they're not apart very often. Their main carry, Gyrocopter, is in their jungle farming the camps that their supports have stacked. As the rest of his team looks for solo pickoffs to get themselves gold and also to set back the heroes on the other team, because when you die, you are not gaining resources out on the map. So you want to be dead as little as possible.
Let me ask this. At this point in the game, how deep into the game do you feel like we are? We've made that switch from tracking last hits to tracking net worth. Does that mean that we're nearing, like in your mind as a viewer, when you see that, does that mean, okay, we're nearing like the end of the game? Does that mean this is like the halfway point? Like what does that signify, if anything?
We're probably in what you'd refer to as mid game. So what we're seeing here is Cloud9's carry stealing an ancient stack from Secret, which is an enormous amount of gold. And now Secret tried to respond and stop him, but he blinked out and teleported out. And now that Venomancer is going to try to teleport out. And he did, because the call from Axe, which would have disrupted his teleport scroll, wasn't in time.
Sure.
So that was a really smart play from Cloud9, and you'll see that Anti-Mage's net worth jumped by about 1,000 gold right there, which otherwise would have been 1,000 gold that went to Gyrocopter.
Now Anti-Mage is suddenly in second.
Yes. So plays like that are really important, especially in very high levels of Dota. Having an awareness of the map, sort of understanding when you can prevent the other team from getting something is really important. And that's one of the reasons that teams will put up a lot of rewards to try to keep vision and keep an awareness of the map. And teams that don't do that lose. Just flat out.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So Secret is winning right now, but it's not impossible. But they just took a really bad fight.
Sure.
And what happened there is
you mentioned with the stealing that stack, that was just like a very smart play from Cloud9. So like, with more smart plays like that, if they continue to be very smart, it is still possible for them to reverse momentum on the game.
Yes. Especially now, there is what's called a comeback meta. But unfortunately, the Anti-Mage blinks away and gets away. So that bad team fight, the team fight that Cloud9 just lost mid, they lost it in part because Magnus, one of their characters, did his ultimate, and Rubik on the other team stole it and did the exact same thing to them, which put Secret in a position to win that fight.
What is the ultimate that Magnus has?
It's called Reverse Polarity. It takes every enemy within a certain radius and slams them together and does damage and stuns them. And so with that, there are a lot of abilities that are area of effect that affect an area on the map and everything inside of it. So they want to do reverse polarity and do damage to things in the middle of the map. So right now, what Cloud9 is doing is they're sneaking into Roche so that Envy, the anti-mage, can kill it. And when Roche dies, he drops something called the Aegis of the Immortal. And when the Aegis of the Immortal is held by an enemy and they die, they're brought back to life a few seconds later.
Yeah.
And the enemy team doesn't get any gold.
How significant would you say killing Roshan is to like in the sense of, obviously this is going to help Cloud9 reverse their momentum a little bit. Does this make it suddenly more likely, like, oh, they might actually win now?
Not necessarily, but an Aegis can turn a team fight because it goes from 5-on-5 to essentially 6-on-5.
Sure.
So on the right hero, it can really it can really turn the tide of a fight. Or it might not, because that person is dead for 5 seconds, and if, let's say, Cloud9 and Secret take a fight, if Secret can kill Anti-Mage, who has the Aegis right now, they might have the damage to completely wipe out the rest of Cloud9 before Anti-Mage comes back.
Sure. So it's something that can help a lot, but it isn't like a complete, it doesn't completely turn the tide.
Right. So we're back to net worth. A second ago, we were at a graph showing hero level.
He's the lowest net worth on the map.
Yeah.
Right there, Anti-Mage thought that maybe he wanted to kill Razor and decided not to.
Maybe not so much.
Right now, that Bane picked up an invisibility rune, which means that Razor can't see him. But in the meantime, this is Secret continuing to apply pressure. And again, you'll hear the casters talk about that as Cloud9 tries to figure out what they want to do from a position where they're behind, Secret continues to try to solidify their advantage and make it so that Cloud9 can't leave their base safely.
Yeah, so it's not a game, like, you can't really become complacent in, like, well, we're ahead, we're probably just going to win.
Right. And so the thing is, that's called map control. Like, the thing about towers is that you can teleport to them if they're your towers. And so the fewer towers you have on the map, the fewer places you have to teleport to, and the less mobility you have to respond to situations. So as one team takes control and destroys... oh geez, I don't know what Rubik just stole there. As one team destroys towers and the others lose them, the team destroying towers gain what's called map control.
Yeah.
And the more map control they have, the more free they are to farm every jungle on the map. The more able they are to pick off heroes. So here you'll see Rubik trying to put down wards so that Secret can maintain map control and pick off Anti-Mage as he goes into that jungle to farm. And meanwhile, as the rest of Cloud9 is doing stuff, Arteezy is pushing top.
Top lane, solo pressure here by Arteezy, really far out. No TP, what are you doing there, Arteezy?
Doesn't look great for Arteezy.
No. And you'll see that little that purple thing above him meant that he had an ability cast on him from Bane called Enfeeble, which reduces the damage that he does.
Sure.
So here you'll see a fight recap, and that'll show what the net gold and XP change is from a fight.
Oh, nice.
And you'll see that it's a pretty good swing for Cloud9, which is why as you become more powerful in Dota, you want to die less because you're giving more golden experience to the enemy heroes.
Yeah, so it's safe to say that was, I don't know if you want to say it's a mistake on Arteezy's part, but at least it gave Cloud9 an advantage.
It helped Cloud9 economically. But the question for Secret is, what did they get out of it? Like, do they felt like they did enough damage to that top tower, for example, to justify losing a hero?
Yeah.
And if they did, then it was worth it. Like, dying isn't the worst thing in the world as long as you get something from it in Dota. And so the question is, what did you get from that death? So whether or not Arteezy got enough damage on that tower to justify dying and being out of the game and not being able to farm for a while, that's, open to discussion.
Sure.
The thing about Secret is that they tend to be very good at knowing when they're getting enough to justify something. And here, you'll see Anti-Mage pick up a double damage rune, which is an incredibly powerful thing for him to pick up, as he's the person doing the most damage on his team. And with a character like Anti-Mage, he's working to a specific item more than a lot of other characters. In his case, it's something called a Battle Fury. And the thing with the Battle Fury is that it does a percentage of his primary damage to everything else around where he's attacking. So it becomes an area of effect attack.
Sure.
And here you'll see them about to take a fight and losing it, because the Aegis on Anti-Mage only lasts a certain amount of time, and it just expired. So Cloud9 pushed a fight that they couldn't win, because it took too long, and Envy lost the Aegis from Roshan and didn't get that second life he was expecting.
Yeah. Arguably, would you say it is? It's more devastating to push something you can't win and lose when you're on the side that's already at a disadvantage.
Yeah. Well, it's hard to say. It's just
Okay.
It's more like calculus than arithmetic or algebra.
Sure.
So the thing about that fight, and something that the casters suggest later, is that when Roche dies and someone picks up the Aegis, that Aegis will always expire within the same amount of time, and usually teams will take a timer of when Roche goes down so that they know when the Aegis is expired.
Sure.
So the casters suggest that that Secret knew that the Aegis was about to go down. So they took that fight because they knew that if they made it go just a few more seconds, that Anti-Mage would no longer have it, and they would be able to win that fight. So that's sort of a testament to how good Secret as a team are at this game, that they understood that.
That is pretty impressive.
It's good game sense. You'll hear game sense talked about a lot. It's a combination of sort of intangible and tangible game knowledge that combines to make someone good at Dota. And Secret is a group of people that have an incredible amount of game sense. So at this point, Cloud9 is in a lot of trouble. But the thing about an anti-mage is a snowball hero, in that if he is given an opportunity to get his items, if he's given an opportunity to get powerful, he can turn the tide of a game almost by himself.
Yeah.
And so Secret is playing, and I'm sure the casters will talk about this, and they'll talk about it a lot when you see a game with a character like Anti-Mage. Secret is on a timer for how long they have to finish this game before it becomes much harder for them.
Yeah, and that's what I was going to say. Anti-Mage, from the way you're describing it, it's a hero that is, the end game is going to be where that hero shines.
Sure. You'll hear casters and analysts talk about how heroes scale. And what that means is where they start versus where they end up from a power perspective.
Yeah.
Anti-Mage is a character that scales incredibly well. So the longer a game goes, the more dangerous it is for a team whose characters don't scale as well.
Certainly.
So here you have Secret chasing the Venomancer and not actually getting him because he was smart enough to get out. And what you have here is, while that fight was going on bottom, Cloud9 is doing what's called split pushing, where different heroes go to different lanes and try to cause damage on towers, like in order to make it impossible for the other team to respond completely. So you'll see here that Envy on the Anti-Mage is actually doing really well at split pushing, and that's something that Anti-Mage actually does. He has an item called a Manta, which is another one of the items that he's slowly building toward, that allow him to have illusions of himself. And those illusions do a percentage of the damage he does, and also do his sort of special ability. And with Anti-Mage, the reason that he's so powerful is that when he hits someone with his attack, he burns away their mana.
Sure.
And that does extra damage. And so, as a character is fighting Anti-Mage, they're running out of an ability to use their spells. And his ultimate, when cast on an enemy, takes the amount of mana that they have at maximum versus the amount of mana that they don't have currently, and does an enormous amount of damage based on that difference.
Wow.
And
that's some math.
And it does it in a sort of explosive radius. So if there's an intelligence hero on Secret like Rubik, who has a very large mana pool, if he runs out of mana from Anti-Mage attacking him a bunch, and Anti-Mage casts his ult on him, that could wipe his entire team.
Yeah, suddenly that's like a huge, super powerful.
So it becomes like this big consideration that Secret has to make when they're in fights. Like, do Dazzle and Rubik need to be away from the rest of the fight when they're out of mana so that Anti-Mage can't kill his entire team? And you'll hear talk about stuff like this referenced using the word positioning. There are a lot of heroes in the game right now that punish bad positioning, and usually Bad positioning means either heroes are grouped too close together, or they're not in the right places at the right time to take a fight, and bad positioning loses games in Dota.
Sure.
So, right now, Cloud9 is losing economically, although you'll see that the Anti-Mage's net worth is considerable.
It's gone way up from where it was.
Yes. But as they're losing towers, Anti-Mage is split pushing and taking towers deep into Secret's base.
Yeah.
So at the top, what you'll hear them referred to as the AI creeps for each team spawn from barracks in their base. Those are referred to in shorthand as racks. And we'll get back to that in a second, but we're about to see a fight in the Roche pit.
You blink in, Gale, RP. You got almost everything you want. Where is this weave as well from Poppy? He's got to use it to actually scout at the moment. And yeah, Kuro on the other side of the tree line. They're jumping in 4-stuff up from Zai. He can blink back down again into a two-man call. And Roshan's not dead yet. There's your RP from Bosun for the pickup. Rubik, and he stole RP!
That was an intense fight. That was a real back and forth.
And as those fights happen, the good casters will explain what's happening as they do, as this caster did just now.
Certainly.
Which is why we stopped talking, so that you could hear him talk about that.
Yeah.
So the thing about taking Roche is that you'll see that it's a cul-de-sac. Like there's no good way out of it if you get ambushed in it. So a lot of teams will try to take a team fight with the other team in the Roche pit in order to have an advantage. But because Secret played that so well, that's not how things worked out. So here, Secret is actually in a much better position than they were in. One important thing as the game gets later is the graph or the chart in the upper left corner, which is showing buyback. Basically, when a hero dies, if they have enough gold, they can buy back into the game. They can instantly respawn. But when they do, a timer starts that prevents them from doing that again for 6 minutes. And if, while that timer is going, they die again, their respawn timer will be even longer than it was.
Sure.
And also for a minute or so, they will get much less gold from killing enemies than they would have if they hadn't bought back. It's a penalty. But for things like base defense or long team fights, someone buying back can turn the tide of a team fight, because as with the Aegis, it turns it into a 6v5 or a 7v5 as opposed to the score that it's in right now.
There are so many good ones to pick from.
It's still only a level 2 ulti though, so it's not going to last as long.
So now Secret is sort of deciding that they want to push, which means that they're moving down a lane to try to knock down the tower at the end of it. And now they're high ground pushing. The tier 3 towers inside of a base, that's the third tower in a lane, are on what's called high ground. High ground is a defensive advantage because there's a mischance shooting from lower ground onto higher ground. And also you can't see up high ground unless you have a unit there. So pushing high ground is a very dangerous thing for a team to do, and it's where a lot of teams end up losing the game, even if they've had a lead. So you'll hear casters and analysts talk about high ground push and whether or not a team has it, and it's something that teams have to consider when they're making their drafts or their build, which is the items and levels that they take in different abilities throughout the course of a game on specific characters. Does all this make sense, Phil?
It's making sense. I'm following it surprisingly well.
So
it's especially like the early game when there's so much going on at different points in the map. I actually find it weirdly, I find Dota easier to follow later in the game when the teams tend to be grouping up a little more.
Yeah, it's just because there's fewer more monumental moments as the game goes on, because early on, 1 or 2 fights isn't going to be the end of the game, but as the game gets to this point, if Cloud9 were to, say, be wiped by Secret, which means all team members die, then there's not really anything to stop Secret from destroying their entire base.
Okay, his butterfly is a little bit less on the priority list now.
These notifications aren't something that you'll see next week at TI because the group stages are over. There will only be one game being played at a time. But it was a nice thing to have during the group stages because there were 3 streams simultaneously.
Sure.
And that will happen in other tournaments. Like the things that we're talking about here about TI, this applies pretty evenly to just Dota tournaments in general. And so meanwhile, we have Anti-Mage counter-pushing right now, which is what he's good at. One of the things that he's good at. And also, if you're watching Dota in client, which you can do, you can roll over items and heroes and abilities to see what they do.
Yeah, which seems like an actual, like, pretty awesome way to watch.
So here, you'll hear the casters talk about Cloud9 started a fight and couldn't win it. And so instead of everyone staying and dying, they disengage. And some teams are better at disengaging than others. Here, Cloud9 was actually pretty okay with disengaging and only lost 1 hero, which in the grand scheme of things isn't that terrible.
Sure, it's not, you know, it's not perfect, but it's not going to lose them the game.
Sure.
As long as Anti-Mage can farm, I think Cloud9 will be like, you know what?
So when you see that gold thing appearing over a tower, that means that it's invincible. That's called fortification.
That's right, yeah.
And generally in Dota, when you see that, that means that the item holding it is immune to some kind of damage. When you trigger a BKB, it has a similar glow, and it means you're immune to spells.
Sure.
Dude, he lives there.
So there's your DD rune you're talking about.
They should look
Meanwhile,
for
Kuro looking for a kill over on Misery, gets the pick up, throwing him back, triggers the sigil.
Right now, Anti-Mage is trying to decide if he wants that kill bad enough to risk fighting an axe, and he decided not to, and that he would rather just get more money. And for a hero like Anti-Mage, this is really important. And he's becoming incredibly powerful. Looking at Anti-Mage right now, he's got an item called a Heart, which, if you go without being attacked by an enemy for a few seconds, grants you an enormous amount of health regen per second, as well as giving you additional strength, which gives you more hit points. He's got his Manta. For Gyrocopter, one of the main important enemies or items he has that you'll hear a lot about on a lot of different heroes is a Satanic, which, when triggered, allows you to steal 25% of the damage you're doing as health regeneration.
Sure.
And right there, Magnus died quickly, so he bought back.
Yeah.
The homing missile comes in, they do take out the tower, and now, well, where is it? You jump in with the Gale, it hits all the secret. Magnus died almost instantly the second that started.
There's so much.
Zai looking for another target.
So right here, there were a few instances where Secret almost were able to kill, or where Cloud9 were almost able to kill Secret, but Shallow Grave as an ability totally disrupted their ability to finish a team fight.
One of the things I just heard one of the announcers say is that they just said this is looking very grim right now, which certainly, from my perspective, is too. At what point, you know, like, it's still too early to say, like, oh, they've won it at this point.
Nope. That's Cloud9 calling good game, which is
never mind. It's not too early to say that because that's what happened.
When the main carry on a team dies and buys back and then dies again, which is referred to as a dieback, that's usually a sign that the game might be over, especially when, as Secret were, they were in the base.
Sure. So you know, thank you for helping walk me through this, Arthur. What does this game mean in the grand scheme of the International? Was this one where, like Cloud9, are they out?
No, Cloud9 are, I think, maybe in the top 8.
Sure.
Over the course of this week, there were group stages for TI, where each team played every other team in their group. The groups were split into 2. Each team would play every other team twice. And if you won 2-0 against the other team, you got 3 points. If you drew, you got 1 point. And if you lost both games, you got 0 points. And so based on points, certain teams were elevated to the winners bracket of TI, which means they had to play fewer games. and some teams will go to the losers bracket and have to play out of the losers bracket and play more games to conceivably win the international.
So if somebody's watching this, they've watched this, they're like, okay, I'm starting to understand it. I want to watch some more of the international this year. Where should they go and when?
There are actually a lot of ways to watch Dota right now. If you have Dota installed, there is a watch tab in the client that you can use to watch the international games being played, which is really easy, and it will allow you to select casters to listen to. And if you've got Twitch or access to Twitch, every game will be on Twitch in multiple languages. Dota2.com actually has a really robust spectator client in beta right now that not only shows the game in 1080p 60 if you've got the bandwidth, it also shows real-time stats and map movements from all the characters in the game in a really interesting way. So there are actually a lot of ways to watch the international this year.
Cool. Well, I'm definitely going to be checking some of it out, and I appreciate you helping me figure out how to watch it, Arthur.
Well, it's my pleasure. This is the first of many, many days of Dota for me over the next 9 days.
I bet you're very excited.
I'm looking forward to it.